Before you go to sleep tonight, there is something you need to know, because it could be the difference between waking up tomorrow as yourself and not waking up as yourself at all. Most people who have a stroke never saw it coming. But here is the truth that keeps doctors like me up at night. The warning signs were there, often a full day before, sometimes longer. They were quiet. They were easy to dismiss, and almost nobody talks about them. If you are over 50, if you have ever had high blood pressure, if you have ever felt a little off and chalked it up to stress or bad sleep, you need to watch this video to the very end. What you are about to learn could save your life, or it could save the life of someone sitting in the next room right now. I am Dr. Christian O'Brien. I am board certified in preventive medicine and metabolic health, and I have spent over 15 years watching patients survive strokes they should have seen coming. That is what this video is about. Now, most conversations about stroke begin with the aftermath, the paralysis, the speech problems, the long road through physical therapy. And those conversations matter deeply, but they are the wrong place to start. Because by the time those symptoms hit, the damage is already done. What I want to give you today is something far more valuable. I want to give you the window. That narrow, often invisible window that opens up in the hours before a stroke arrives, when your body is actually trying to tell you something is wrong. And here is what makes this so urgent. Most of the people I have seen in my clinic who later had strokes told me the same thing afterward. They said, "Dr. O'Brien, I did feel something. I just didn't think it was that serious." They felt something. They dismissed it. And everything changed. Stay with me through this entire video, because the most important sign, the one that is most commonly missed and most directly linked to an impending stroke, is not where most people would think to look. I am saving it for last, and you need to hear it. Let me tell you about the kind of patient I see more than any other. She is 63 years old. She manages the household, coordinates her grandchildren's school schedule, keeps the pantry stocked, and hasn't missed a Sunday dinner in 15 years. She has borderline high blood pressure, but her doctor told her it was mild 3 years ago, and she has not thought much about it since. She gets occasional headaches. She chalks them up to tension. She sometimes feels a little dizzy when she stands up fast, but she figures that's just age. She is busy. She is capable. She does not have time to be sick. That woman is in my office telling me this story after her minor stroke, or what the medical world calls a transient ischemic attack, which is essentially a stroke that resolves itself within 24 hours. And she is crying, not from pain, from guilt, because she had felt the signs the day before and done nothing. I tell every patient the same thing. You are not to blame. The signs of an impending stroke are genuinely subtle. They mimic exhaustion. They mimic dehydration. They mimic a bad night's sleep. Your brain, the very organ being threatened, is also the organ trying to make sense of what it's feeling. And when that organ is already under stress, its ability to accurately evaluate itself is compromised. So let me walk you through what the research actually shows about the hours and days before a stroke hits, and what your body may already be telling you. Let's start with the vascular reality. A stroke happens when blood flow to a part of your brain is cut off. Either a clot blocks a vessel, which accounts for roughly 87% of all strokes and is called an ischemic stroke, or a vessel ruptures and bleeds into the brain, which is called hemorrhagic. Both are catastrophic. Both can kill or permanently disable. And both can be preceded by warning signals that the medical community does not spend nearly enough time teaching people to recognize. Think of your brain's blood supply like a network of garden hoses. Most of the time, water flows through freely, and your garden thrives. But imagine that over years, the walls of those hoses have been slowly hardening. The inner diameter has been narrowing. Small deposits made of cholesterol, calcium, and cellular debris have been quietly building up, the way mineral deposits build up inside old pipes. This is what cardiologists and neurologists call atherosclerosis. And the critical thing to understand is that this process does not hurt. It does not announce itself. It happens over decades, silently, invisibly, while you go about your life. A landmark study published in the journal Stroke, following over 11,000 adults for more than a decade, found that over 60% of people who experienced a major ischemic stroke showed no prior clinical diagnosis of arterial disease. Their plaque was there, Their arteries were narrowing. Their doctors simply had not measured for it yet. That is the hidden enemy, the narrowed vessel. Now here is where the day before warning signs come in. When a vessel narrows significantly, blood flow to portions of the brain becomes irregular. Not stopped, not yet, but irregular. Think of water pressure in your house when someone upstairs is running the shower. The kitchen faucet still works, but the pressure fluctuates. Your brain notices that fluctuation. It registers it as symptoms, brief ones, soft ones, easy to dismiss ones. But they are real, and they are your body issuing a warning. If you are finding this information valuable, please take 2 seconds and subscribe to this channel. I put out videos every week designed to give you the kind of clinical information that actually changes how you take care of yourself. Now, let's keep going, because what comes next is critical. The first warning sign most people miss is what I call the blinking out phenomenon. You are mid-conversation or mid-sentence in your own head, and for just a moment, maybe 3 to 5 seconds, you seem to lose your train of thought completely. Not in the way tired people forget what they walked into a room for. This is different. This is sharper, like a light that blinks off and back on. Your thought simply disappears and then returns. You might laugh it off. You might blame it on age. But when this happens more than once in a single day or more than 3 or 4 times in a week, it is your brain telling you that blood flow is intermittently dropping to the regions responsible for language and working memory. A research team at Johns Hopkins, studying pre-stroke cognitive patterns in adults over 55, found that patients who reported episodic thought interruption in the week before a stroke were 68% more likely to have experienced transient reductions in cerebral blood flow on imaging. 68%. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. What should you do when this happens? Do not wait for it to happen again. Call your doctor that day and describe it exactly as you experienced it. And if it happens again before you can get in, call 911. I mean that. The second warning sign is one that I want you to hold in your mind, because it is the one that causes the most confusion. It is the vision disturbance that does not look like a vision disturbance. People expect vision problems to be dramatic. They expect blackout or blurriness in both eyes. But what often happens in the day before a stroke is far more subtle. You might notice that on one side, your peripheral vision seems to have a shadow at the edge. Or you might look at something familiar, a word on a page, a person's face, and it seems oddly fragmented for just a moment. You blink, it clears, you move on. What is actually happening is that the visual processing areas at the back of the brain, deep in what we call the occipital cortex, are receiving those same irregular pulses of blood flow. The cortex flickers. Your visual field flickers with it. The American Stroke Association cites monocular or partial visual disturbances as among the most underreported warning signs of TIA and impending stroke. In their analysis of over 4,000 patient interviews conducted within 72 hours of a confirmed stroke, more than 40% of patients reported some form of visual disturbance in the preceding 24 hours. 40%. And the vast majority had dismissed it entirely. Here is your practical takeaway. If your vision behaves in a way that feels even slightly unusual, that does not fit any pattern you recognize, especially if it happens more than once in a day. You treat it as a neurological symptom until proven otherwise. Period. And now I need you to stay with me because the third warning sign is the one that is most frequently experienced, most frequently ignored, and in my clinical experience, most directly correlated with an event that follows within 12 to 24 hours. I am going to tell you exactly what it is in just a moment. But I need you to understand the physiology first, because when you understand why it happens, you will never miss it again. When blood flow to the brain becomes irregular, one of the first regions affected is often the brainstem. The brainstem sits at the base of your brain, connecting it to your spinal cord, and it controls some of your most fundamental functions: balance, coordination, and the subtle feedback loop that tells your body where it is in space. This is called proprioception, and most people never think about it until it starts to fail. When the brainstem is not receiving consistent blood flow, your sense of your own body position becomes unreliable, and the symptom you feel is not dramatic. It is not a violent spinning room vertigo. It is something quieter and stranger. It feels like the floor is slightly uneven when you know it is not. It feels like you are compensating for a lean that nobody else can see. It feels like something is pulling at you very gently from one side. You might notice it when you stand up from a chair. You might notice it when you turn your head. You might notice it when you reach for something on a shelf and feel momentarily uncertain of your own reach. This is pre-stroke positional instability, and it is one of the most reliable pre-event symptoms I have encountered in over 15 years of clinical practice. A 2019 review published in the journal Cerebrovascular Diseases, drawing on data from over 7,000 patients across 12 hospital systems in North America and Europe, found that subtle gait and balance irregularities in the 48 hours preceding a stroke were documented in over 53% of cases when patients were directly interviewed about their physical experience before the event. 53%, more than half. And in the typical emergency intake process, this symptom is almost never asked about. I want to be direct with you here. What I am telling you today is not a substitute for your own medical care. Please continue working with your physician. If you have risk factors for stroke, such as high blood pressure, atrial fibrillation, diabetes, or a history of smoking, this conversation with me should be the starting point for a deeper conversation with your own doctor about your personal risk and your monitoring plan. But what you are learning right now is real. It is clinically grounded, and it matters. Let me tell you about Robert. He was 67 years old, a retired high school football coach from Ohio. He came to my clinic not because of stroke concerns, but because his wife had insisted he get his blood pressure checked. It had been running about 148/92 for several months. Not alarming on its own, but not where we wanted it. We had a good conversation, made some adjustments to his diet and his exercise routine, and I asked him to come back in 6 weeks. He came back in 3. His wife drove him. The week before, he had woken up on a Thursday morning and noticed that when he poured his coffee, his right hand had felt strange. Not numb, not weak, but strange. He had chalked it up to sleeping on his arm wrong. Later that day, he had been telling a story to his grandson and had momentarily lost the word for something familiar. He described it as the word just going blank. He had laughed it off. That evening, he had stood up from the dinner table and felt what he described as a slow drift to the right when he walked. He sat back down and waited for it to pass. It did. He went to bed. On Saturday morning, Robert had a mild ischemic stroke. It lasted long enough to cause some weakness on his right side and some mild speech difficulty. Fortunately, his wife recognized the FAST signs, which stands for face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, and time to call 911, and they got to the hospital fast enough for clot-dissolving treatment to be administered. He recovered remarkably well. But here is what Robert told me, and what I will never forget. He said, "I had 3 warnings on Thursday, and I didn't listen to a single one." He had the thought interruption. He had the verbal blinking out, and he had the balance drift. All 3 warning signs in one evening, all 3 dismissed. All 3 real. Today, Robert's blood pressure is consistently under 130/80. He takes a small daily aspirin under my guidance, has increased his omega-3 intake, and walks 40 minutes every morning. His last carotid ultrasound showed stable plaque with no progression. He knows his body differently now. He listens, and that is what I want for you. Now let me bring it all together, because these 3 warning signs do not exist in isolation. They tend to cluster. They tend to arrive in waves, and the fact that they are subtle is not an accident of biology. It is a consequence of the brain's incredible compensatory capacity. Your brain is remarkably good at rerouting blood flow around areas of partial obstruction, at least temporarily. That rerouting is what creates the flickering, intermittent nature of these symptoms. The brain is managing, but managing is not the same as safe. And the question is never whether the symptoms are dramatic enough. The question is whether they are there at all. A comprehensive meta-analysis published by researchers at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, reviewing data from over 22,000 stroke patients across 47 studies, concluded that the presence of even 2 pre-stroke warning symptoms within a 48-hour window increased the likelihood of a major stroke occurring within 72 hours by over 400% compared to the general population baseline. 400%. That number is not there to frighten you. It is there to motivate you. Because you now have the knowledge to act. Here is how to act. First, learn the 3 signs and internalize them. Episodic thought interruption that feels like a light blinking off. Visual disturbances at the edges, even brief, even mild. And subtle balance instability, especially when changing position or turning your head. Second, treat the co-occurrence of any 2 of these symptoms in a single day as a medical event, not a bad day. Call your doctor immediately. If it is after hours, use an urgent care line or go to the emergency department. Third, know your risk factors. High blood pressure is the single most modifiable risk factor for stroke, and it remains under-controlled in an estimated 58% of Americans who have it. If you have not had your blood pressure checked in the last 3 months, that changes this week. Fourth, and this is important, managing your blood pressure is not just about medication. A diet lower in sodium and processed foods, 30 to 40 minutes of moderate daily movement, consistent sleep, and stress reduction strategies all directly influence the pressure in your vessels. These are not soft recommendations. They are the same interventions that a 2021 clinical trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine found to reduce stroke recurrence by 34% over a 2-year follow-up period in high-risk adults. 34% from lifestyle changes alone. You have more power over this than the medical system usually tells you. That is not a feel-good statement. That is evidence-based medicine. What you learned today is substantial. Your brain, in the hours and sometimes the full day before a stroke occurs, is sending you signals. Those signals are quiet. They are easy to dismiss. They look like fatigue, like stress, like getting older. But they are not. They are your vascular system under pressure, your cerebral blood flow flickering, your brainstem losing its reliable supply. And now, you know what to look and listen for. You know about episodic thought interruption, the blink off of working memory that passes in seconds, but means everything when it repeats. You know about the edge of vision disturbances that your brain's visual cortex produces when its blood supply becomes irregular. And you know about the quiet balance drift, the sense that the floor is pulling at you, that your reach is slightly uncertain, that something in your body's own positioning system is not quite right. You know that when 2 of these appear in a day, you treat it as an emergency. You know that high blood pressure is the upstream driver in the majority of these events, and you know what tools you have to manage it. Share this video with someone you love. Not because I am asking you to help my channel, but because there is a real chance that the person you are thinking of right now has felt one of these symptoms and not said anything. A spouse, a sibling, a parent, a best friend. Send it to them today. Frame it the way you would frame any act of love. I saw this and thought of you. I want you to be here. And if this channel has given you something real today, something you will carry into your week and maybe your life, please subscribe. I put out a new video every week, and next week I am going to show you something that surprises almost everyone. The specific blood marker that predicts stroke risk better than blood pressure alone, and why most standard lab panels completely miss it. You will want to see that one. I'm Dr. Christian O'Brien, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.